would you like to ask me questions and then let me answer them, or would you like to debate me on these topics? I noticed that when you had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, you gave them multiple choice answers to the questions that you asked, and you allowed them to answer the questions. I'm happy to be here to talk about policy, but if you're going to interrupt me every single time that I open my mouth, then why am I even doing this? So please ask a question, and I'd ask you to be polite enough to let me answer it.
In a gripping and often contentious interview with CNN's Dana Bash, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance showcased his ability to navigate challenging questions while simultaneously calling out perceived media bias. The wide-ranging exchange, which covered topics from immigration to abortion and foreign policy, highlighted Vance's commitment to representing his constituents and his willingness to engage in robust debate. The interview began with a focus on Vance's controversial comments regarding Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. Rather than backpedaling, Vance stood firm in his position, framing the issue as one of genuine concern for his constituents.
Well, Dana, first of all, what's putting the residents of Springfield at risk, which was a town completely ignored by the American media until Donald Trump and I started surfacing some of these concerns, is that they can't afford housing, they can't afford health care. The schools have been overwhelmed, the hospitals have been overwhelmed, and they're overwhelmed because Kamala Harris allowed 20,000 Haitian migrants to get dropped into a small Ohio town of about 40,000 people, and it's completely overwhelmed the services.
This response set the tone for the rest of the interview, with Vance positioning himself as a champion of the people, unafraid to address controversial topics that he believes the mainstream media has overlooked. He further elaborated on his approach to representing his constituents.
My constituents have brought approximately a dozen separate concerns to me. 10 of them are verifiable and confirmable, and a couple of them I talk about because my constituents are telling me firsthand that they're seeing these things. So I have two options, Dana. I can ignore them, which is what the American media has done for years to this community, or I can actually talk about what people are telling me.
As the interview progressed, tensions rose, with Vance accusing Bash of applying a double standard in her questioning. This moment highlighted Vance's strategy of not just defending his positions, but actively challenging the media's approach to political coverage.
And Dana, I think this illustrates the entire contrast between how we're trying to go about this debate and how a lot of the Democrats are trying to go about this debate. They're talking about 12 Proud Boys marching in Springfield, Ohio. They're talking about the frankly fake debunkings of a lot of these stories that are out there. I'm talking to my constituents, and I'm hearing terrible things about what's going on in Springfield, and Kamala Harris's open border policies have caused these problems.
The conversation then took a serious turn when Bash brought up accusations that Vance's comments had incited violence. Vance forcefully rejected these claims, emphasizing his condemnation of all forms of violence.
There is nothing that I have said that has led to threats against these hospitals. These hospitals, the bomb threats and so forth, it's disgusting. The violence is disgusting. We condemn it. We condemn all violence.
Senator, this happened after...
The interview also touched on Vance's criticisms of Tim Walz's military record, a topic that has been a point of contention in the campaign. Vance stood firm in his position, drawing a distinction between criticizing service and criticizing dishonesty.
I'm not criticizing Tim Walz's service. I'm criticizing the fact that he lied about his service for political gain, Dana. Now, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and you know this. And look, there are a lot of things that I'm proud about. I've never lied about what I did or overstated it because it would be beneficial to me in an election. I think that's what Tim Walz did. That's what I was criticizing. And yes, I do think it's scandalous behavior.
As the interview continued, Vance addressed the issue of abortion, a topic that has become increasingly contentious in American politics. He emphasized the Trump campaign's approach to this sensitive issue.
What President Trump has said is that we are going to let voters make these decisions. And again, Texas might have a view that President Trump disagrees with. They might have a view that President Trump agrees with, but you've got to let the voters make these decisions.
This response highlighted Vance's strategy of framing controversial issues in terms of states' rights and voter choice, a position that aligns with traditional conservative values while potentially appealing to moderates concerned about federal overreach. The conversation then shifted to economic policy, with Vance discussing the role of the Federal Reserve and monetary policy.
what he said.
Right now,
And
the president
two,
doesn't have a say.
Well, the president has a say in the sense that the president appoints the Federal
Right.
Reserve governors, but he's saying, to be clear, President Trump is saying, I think, something that's really important and actually profound, which is that the political leadership of this country should have more say over the monetary policy of this country. I agree with him. That should fundamentally be a political decision.
This statement underscored the Trump-Vance ticket's willingness to challenge established norms and institutions, positioning themselves as outsiders ready to shake up the status quo in Washington. As the interview neared its conclusion, Vance expressed frustration with what he saw as an undue focus on past comments rather than current policy issues. This moment encapsulated his broader critique of media coverage in the election.
Okay, you've now asked me 3 questions about comments that I made 3 years ago. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she supported policies that opened the American southern border. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she lied to the American people about Joe Biden's middle facility for the office.
In a final notable exchange, Vance emphasized his willingness to engage with the media and participate in debates, positioning himself and the Trump campaign as more transparent and accessible than their opponents.
We believe in talking to the media. We believe in answering questions. We believe in debating. I think it's really important. I mean, look, I'm asking the American people to make me their vice president. It's really important to stand before the American people to make that case, and I'm going to keep on doing it in whatever forum I get the opportunity.
Throughout this high-stakes interview, J.D. Vance demonstrated his ability to hold his ground against challenging questions, often turning the tables on the interviewer and highlighting what he sees as media bias. His responses underscored a commitment to representing his constituents' concerns, even when those concerns might be controversial or unpopular in certain circles. Vance's combative yet composed approach showcased a politician unafraid to tackle difficult topics head-on, potentially resonating with supporters who feel their voices have been ignored by mainstream media. As the campaign progresses, Vance's performance in this interview may well serve as a template for how he and the Trump campaign intend to engage with the media and present their message to the American people. His willingness to confront contentious issues, challenge established norms, and advocate for a more direct form of democracy could prove to be a powerful strategy in the upcoming election.